Hey, yo, I want to talk about Bloomburrow. And it's been out now for just over a month, so you know what that means. Time to forget about it and move on. We've been teasing Bloomburrow for a whole year, so who cares that you've barely had a chance to flip the page over on your calendar since you started actually playing with the cards before we move on to Duskmourn, the next set? Because obviously we've also been teasing that for just as long. We don't have time to think about Bloomburrow anymore, because we've got Duskmourn to rush through before we get to Foundations and Mystery Boosters and whatever that awful looking Death Ray set is. And then forget about them too. That's all old news because we're going to the moon in a canonical space setting. We're not out of ideas, you're out of ideas. So yeah, while Bloomburrow may still be the current set, it's already dead in terms of discourse. And looking back over its less than 2-month life cycle, I find the question I originally had about the set remains unanswered. As you can see from videos of mine like this one, I, like everyone else, will have preconceived notions about a set before it comes out. But then, before the release of the next one, I like to look back and examine if my preconceived notions were right, or if the set surprised me in some unexpected way. For instance, I put out this video discussing my predictions for Duskmourn, and currently my main concern is that Magic is overdoing it on horror. I think my main question for that set will be, is this scary? Are we running the risk of ruining the genre in Magic, even for other horror planes like Phyrexia and Innistrad, because we'll get sick of all of it in general? Obviously, I'll have a lot of other thoughts on the set, but this question is the main preconception I think I'd like to look back over and challenge once it's all been and gone. This video is another example where I questioned whether Double Feature was really as bad as it seemed, because going into it, the set seemed like an overpriced, uninspired, low-effort cash grab. But without looking at the set in retrospective, I wouldn't have known if there was still any fun or value to be had with it. Thunder Junction, yet another example. As you can see, I said the set was a mess. Them ramming cards from the intended epilogue set into play boosters with little regard for what that does in terms of balance to the formats that use those packs. In addition to legendary creatures that weren't even part of those bonus sheets clearly being designed for Commander but were still stuffed into Standard, is something I wanted to look at closer in that set's retrospective, because from everything I'd seen it really made me think that Thunder Junction, a standard legal set, really wasn't designed with Standard in mind. Wait, what was I talking about again? Oh, right, yeah. So, when Bloomburrow was first announced, my initial thought was that WotC were courting new players. As a setting, it's unlike anything we've seen in Magic before. It's approachable, very twee and cutesy, and didn't appear to be bogged down by years worth of impenetrable lore about Nicol Bolas, Eldrazi, the Phyrexians, the Gatewatch, or the Multiverse. A fresh start, with fresh characters I assume aimed at a fresh audience. But that pre-notion was formed from the set's concept pitch and preview spoiler images alone. And it's one that I hadn't had the chance to discover if it was accurate or not, because I just hadn't played a lot of Bloomburrow in its lengthy 1.5 month window as the current expansion. So today, that's what I'd like to look at. I'm going to get my assistant, Mr. Hands, are you there? Wonderful. To open 6 packs for me, and then we'll just look at the cards and have a chat about mechanics and see what we think on exactly how beginner-friendly Bloomburrow was from a gameplay perspective. Now, normally in these pack opening videos, I like to do something with the cards at the end, like build a deck. I'm not going to do that here. But unlike my Modern Horizons 3 video, where WotC selling of a modern set without modern precon decks inspired me to pioneer a new video technique dubbed non-tent, where I also don't bother to make decks, goddamn. For this video, however, well, once again I am going to stop after pack opening. It's less out of protest this time, and more just because I'm not a beginner. I don't think that me building a deck will really reveal anything to us about what the set's like for someone new. Or at least no more than just opening the cards and looking at the mechanics would. I've chosen to have Mr. Hands open 6 packs because that's how many you get in a pre-release, one of the product's cheaper bundles that I think is likely to attract a new player. You get the box, you get the dice, and I think if I were new, it's probably where I'd want to start. Even after the pre-release weekend, as long as stores still had them in stock of course. And while I'm not actually getting the packs from a pre-release bundle, instead Mr. Hands will just grab 6 packs out of a play booster box, they should in theory all be the same contents. Because as far as I'm aware, the idea that WotC make the pre-release packs better in the hopes of forming hype before the main set drops has no concrete evidence and is just a theory. A regular theory, MatPat's not on YouTube anymore, get over it. If you watched this video of mine, you'll know the box I'm taking the packs from was given to me by my mysterious benefactor, who I'd like to thank once again, but I'm still not going to name them because I said I wouldn't last time and it's literally the same box. Right, with all that being said, let's move to where Mr. Hands has laid out the packs. Good stuff. I know I say it every time, but this is the exciting bit. I do love cracking packs. And, as always, there's no better place to start than with Pack 1. As usual, these were laid out in the order they were opened from the pack. The 6 on the left are commons, the 6 in the middle are the uncommons, rares and wildcards, the 3 on the right are the land, foil and token. And giving an eye over the cards here, Mind Spiral, Valley Rally, Blooming Blast, and Consumed by Greed all share one of Bloomburrow's new mechanics, Gift. So giving an eye to Blooming Blast here as an example, we can see that it's quite a wordy card, considering all the reminder text. But before we judge, let's give it a read and see how understandable it would be for a new player. Gift a treasure. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell. If you do, they create a treasure token before its other effects. Maybe that's just me, but it doesn't feel immediately clear what "it" is referring to in that sentence. It's an artifact with tap and whatever. Hang on. They create a treasure token before its other effects. It's an artifact. Now using "it's" again, but to refer to something else. It's not the cleanest way to say that, but okay. Blooming Blast deals 2 damage to target creature. If the gift was promised, Blooming Blast also deals 3 damage to the creature's controller. Okay, wordy and a little muddled, but let's compare it to Mind Spiral. Gift a tapped fish. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell, so the same wording. If you do, they create a tapped 1/1 blue fish creature before its other effects. So yeah, again, I'd want to change the wording to this spell's other effects for clarity. But I think once someone's had this explained to them, the rule's easy enough to understand even if the type of gift they're giving changes. I also think it's good that the card has the reminder text for how stun counters work too. So yeah, overall, a fun mechanic. I think giving other people stuff for added benefit to yourself is fantastic gameplay. The wording could be a little easier to understand, but it's not that bad. The biggest issue I imagine would be managing all these different tokens. The spotlight card for the pack is Mabel, heir to Cragflame, for no other reason than she's the face of the set. And if I were a new player, I'd be excited to get her even if I didn't know anything else about the game because she's on all the packaging, so she must be a good one. Pack 2. And looking these cards over, they're all very wordy. Now obviously, I know lots of that is flavor text, and most of the rest is reminder text for specific mechanics, which is a good thing, because if we look at Overprotect for instance, one of the less wordy cards, you'll see it gives a creature +3/+3, trample, hexproof, and indestructible until end of turn. That's at least 5 different concepts that a new player will have to bear in mind or have explained to them, which could potentially be a bit much. Even the commons, for instance Sonar Strike, say things like deals 4 damage to target, attacking, blocking, or tapped creature. You gain free life if you control a bat. None of these individual concepts are complicated, but when you stack them on top of each other like this, you may start to run the risk of information overload. Our spotlight card for the pack is Jackdaw Savior, because honestly, I was starting to think you couldn't get alternative frames in play boosters anymore. This is genuinely the first one I've seen opened in a pack. I'd been assuming all the alt art frames like this had just been restricted to collector boosters. Pack 3. And okay, this is more like it. Thistledown Players. When it attacks, you untap a non-land permanent. Nice and simple. Agate Blade Assassin. When it attacks, the defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Also easy to understand. Light Shell Duo, with Prowess and Surveil too. And yes, wordy reminder text for both. But if you've been taught what these mechanics do, then this card technically only has 7 words on it. Even Ruthless Negotiation isn't that complicated, and while upon first inspection you may be confused by what Cast from the Graveyard is, the card does then go on to both have and explain Flashback. So yeah, intuitive actually, and I would say that these are all good cards for beginners. Our spotlight, however, is Whisker Veil Forerunner, because, look at how many words are on that bad boy. Now, yes, it's a rare, but listen to this. Valiant, with no explanation to what that means. Whenever Whisker Veil Forerunner becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, all 1 sentence, no commas, look at the top 5 cards of your library, full stop. You may reveal a creature with mana value 3 or less from among them, You may put it onto the battlefield if it's your turn, Christ. If you don't put it onto the battlefield, put it into your hand, still not finished. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. Just saying, that's quite dense. Again, it's not a common and it's not overly complicated once you understand it, but I could see this word soup confusing new players and maybe even putting some off. Pack 4. Now, this pack has a couple of instances of something I just mentioned, and while I kind of criticised it, I actually think is okay game design. Whisker Quill Scribe, just like our Spotlight card, also has Valiant. It's not a keyword mechanic, so it doesn't get explainer text and on its own means nothing. That's not great. But when you read the words whenever this card becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, etc, etc, it's not hard to intuit that it's just the name of that style of mechanic if you've seen other Valiant cards before it, because they all work the same way, and they do the same with Mind Drill Assailant over here having Threshold. Adding that word at the start doesn't actually help to explain the mechanic on the card, but it does create an easy shorthand reference point for when comparing multiple cards from the same set, and I think that's good. I think that makes it easier to understand overall. Our spotlight card for the pack though is the art card? Is that the Gitrog monster? It is! I know they printed the Gitrog monster in the commander decks, but I'm pretty certain you can't pull that card in the play boosters. Hey Mr. Hans, flip it over. Yeah look, it is the Gitrog monster. Why is that included in these packs? Let me know what you all think in the comments. Isn't it weird to include art for a card that's not in the set? Odd. Pack 5. And there is one card that's caught my eye straight away, but before we get to that I want to look at Thunder Trap Trainer. It's got another of Bloomburrow's new mechanics, Offspring. You may pay an additional 4 as you cast this spell. Easy enough to understand. If you do, when this creature enters, I appreciate that they've said this creature, it's clearer than just saying it, create a 1/1 token copy of it. So yeah, again, a little wordy, but it's all there in the reminder text. I actually think this is a cleaner and simpler to understand mechanic than Gift before it. But this does also fall into the trap of relying on token generation, which I believe could run the risk of becoming overwhelming. Not necessarily in terms of casting mechanics, reactions or triggers, but instead of terms of board state, especially if you don't have enough tokens and are having to use dice or bits of paper. The spotlight card for this pack, however, is easily Builder's Talent, for one reason only, and I don't know why, but okay Bloomburrow, you got me. The idea of Bloomburrow's builders being birds constructing houses like nests, yep, that's cute. I'll admit it, I felt something, well done. He's even got a little hat on. I have no idea what this did it for me, but it did it all the same. Pack 6. And see, now we're talking. When I think beginner-friendly cards, I think simple, one line of text, one keyword or one mechanic spells, and vanilla or French vanilla creatures. Good examples of this are cards like Daggerfang Duo, 3-Tree Rootweaver, and Moonrise Cleric. Let's look at the Rootweaver there. Just a 1/3 that you can tap to add mana. Simple. The Cleric here is a 2/3 with flying, and when it attacks you gain 1 life. It's not about how complicated the individual mechanics are, but how many of them are on the card. A good example of that is Galewind Moose down here. A 6/6 with Flash, Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. That's it, no extra mumbo jumbo. Just 4 keywords, but the fact the card has all 4 of them makes it feel like it's got a lot going on, which in turn makes it feel powerful. If I had my way, this is what rares and mythics would look like. The spotlight card for the pack is Sinister Monolith, because... is that a Cryptolith? Has Nahiri been here? Now, I fell off the story, I think in episode 4. I'm sort of gate-watched out, and as soon as the story turned from following a troupe of new characters to focusing on Rao as he tries to chase down Jason Vraska, a plot point even he seemed exhausted by, I was done. Maybe that's not what the rest of the story is, maybe Rao immediately leaves after that, but I'm never going to know, because I just don't have the energy for it. And honestly, Magic's quality of narrative lately has not been worth giving the benefit of the doubt. I won't give up on it entirely yet, but I'm close, and that should really worry Watsy, because I'm a Vorthos. I'm a part of a large subset of the player base, and if they lose the interest of people like me, then they're in trouble. Anyway, let me know in the comments what this was about. Is this a Nahiri reference, or maybe Ugin? Is Bloomburrow where they learned to craft the cryptoliths in the first place? Or is this, as I suspect, like a lot of Magic's references lately, nothing, and worth me thinking about it as much as the designers seem to at times, which is not at all. Yes, I'm still angry about 6. And that's it. That's our 6 packs. Overall, an interesting mix of cards in there. Some overly wordy walls of block text, but also some simple creatures with only a keyword or 2. So, Bloomburrow. In terms of being a fun expansion for existing players, I can see this doing the job. In terms of getting beginners into the gameplay after they've been attracted by the cute animals, I don't know. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10 in terms of simplicity. If the cards didn't make a point of all having reminder text, that score would be much lower though. But reminder text can only help simplify a card so much if the mechanics themselves are all multi-step, if this then that, if you do, if not, then this, etc, etc. But again, there are some nice clean cards in the mix also. So overall, for beginners, it's okay. Do I think, as I assumed, the set was designed to cater for new players? That's a little harder to say. What do you guys think? Was Bloomburrow beginner friendly? Was that ever the designer's intention? Were you a beginner and this was your first set? If so, how was it as an experience? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and hey, check out my Patreon. I should probably plug that too. Come and help support me to keep making videos like this. I'll be interested to see what that Magic Foundations is like. I would really love the idea of a baseline reset of what a Magic set actually is in terms of mechanics. The game's gotten more complicated and the pace has sped up. And maybe I'm just getting old, but I think things were better back when a turn 3 win wasn't the aim and a turn 1 that involved more than just playing a land and passing your turn was a rarity. With any luck, I'm hoping that Magic Foundations brings us back a little bit to that style of gameplay, or finds a balance and a happy medium. And there we go again, like I said at the start, with each set I go into it with a preconception of what it is or should be. I guess I'm just going to have to do a retrospective on that set too. You know, 1 month after it's come out and they're already asking us to pay attention to the next set again. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like James Diamond, Eggboy the particle that permeates all existence, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me on my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, most importantly subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time. If you do, they create a tapped If you do, they create a tapped 1/1